Imagine logging on to your favorite social media platform, maybe placing a bid on an item that you just have to have, or simply typing a question into a search bar to find some, crucial information. What if I told you that every single one of those seemingly simple actions is underpinned by some really intricate engineering, strategic business models, and a fascinating, sometimes kind of hidden psychology designed to keep you engaged, maybe even hooked? Have you ever stopped to truly consider the invisible forces shaping your digital life, and crucially, how businesses leverage these forces to connect with you, sell to you, and maybe even influence your decisions?
That's exactly right. E-commerce doesn't just, well, happen, it's engineered, seriously. From the foundational business models that drive profit, all the way to the cybersecurity measures that protect our data. The digital economy runs on strategic thinking, robust systems, and the incredibly talented people who actually know how to build them.
Okay, so today we're taking a deep dive into the fascinating and often surprising world of social networks, online auctions, and web portals. We'll be drawing insights from the latest edition of e-commerce, Business Technology Society by Laudon and Traver, alongside some pretty eye-opening research from places like MIT Economics and the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, plus some crucial industry insights as well. Our mission here really is to unpack the technical and business considerations for creating and operating an electronically based business. We'll explore the operational side, the legal perspectives, analyze the technologies available, and discover how these interconnected systems not only drive the digital economy, but also influence, well, pretty much every aspect of our online experience. Get ready for some genuine aha moments that will not only inform your understanding, but also hopefully equip you with practical takeaways for your future careers in the digital space.
Well, and before we dive into these intriguing topics, if you're finding these insights valuable, please take just a moment to like this deep dive, subscribe to our channel, and maybe share it with your friends and colleagues. Your support truly helps us bring you more insider tips and knowledge that can really position you for a bright future in your chosen field. And remember, you'll find additional resources and links to today's source material down in the description below. Okay, let's unpack this. First segment. The social network, tapestry weaving connections, driving commerce. I'm going to start with a pretty fundamental question. What truly defines an online social network? Because let's be honest, it's clearly so much more than just a website, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, when you strip away the flashy interfaces and those endless feeds, at its core, an online social network is really a digital space defined by four key elements. It brings together a specific group of people. It facilitates shared social interaction among them. There are common ties or, shared interests among these members. And these individuals, even if virtually, share an area for a certain period. Think of it less as a static page and more like a dynamic living ecosystem where human connection and interaction are the central currency.
Right. And these digital communities, as much as they feel like such a modern phenomenon, they aren't actually new at all. They have a really interesting history, tracing their roots way back to the beginnings of computer networking.
That's right. Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the whole concept of computer-mediated social interaction goes back surprisingly far. All the way to the 1970s with ARPANET, the precursor to the internet we know. Then we saw the rise of bulletin board systems, or BBS, which were basically online message boards. Following those were multi-user dungeons, MUDs, which were these early text-based online role-playing games where players interacted in shared virtual worlds. Pretty cool, actually. And of course, simple chat rooms. What's fascinating here is that these early networks often grew organically. Like, people found ways to adapt existing institutional or commercial software for broader social purposes. Almost like a happy accident. They weren't initially designed with social networking as their primary goal. They just kind of became the digital watering holes of their era.
Okay, but then something really pivotal happened with the arrival of Web 2.0. This wasn't accidental anymore, was it? It felt much more intentional.
Precisely. Yeah, Web 2.0 marked a significant intentional shift. The technologies developed during this era were explicitly designed for user-generated, collaborative, and shared internet content. This allowed users to build increasingly seamless connections between their online presence and their existing offline social networks. It moved away from the earlier internet, which often fostered anonymous or pseudonymous identities, towards integrating our digital and real-world selves. We saw early examples like Orkut, MySpace, LinkedIn, Friendster, Bebo, Habbo, and of course Facebook fundamentally redefine the online social landscape, making it easier than ever to bring your friends, family, and professional connections online.
And the modern landscape has just exploded since then, branching out into so many specialized niches that it's almost dizzying to keep track of everything.
Indeed, today's social networks are incredibly diverse, catering to almost every imaginable interest and need. I mean, we have platforms dedicated to media and news sharing like YouTube for video, Reddit for community-curated stuff, Instagram for visuals, and TikTok for short-form video. All huge cultural powerhouses now. There's microblogging with platforms like X, formerly Twitter, for quick updates, location-based networking like Foursquare for finding places, dedicated messaging apps like WhatsApp for private chats, social gaming on Twitch for live streaming, and interest-sharing communities like Pinterest for visual discovery. Each one carves out a unique space, catering to different aspects of our digital lives. It really proves the demand for online connection is, well, insatiable.
That's a huge spectrum. So from a business perspective, thinking about e-commerce models, what does all this diversity and evolution actually mean?
That's a really important question for anyone interested in the digital economy. Social networks aren't just for socializing. They represent a significant and, frankly, constantly evolving e-commerce business model in themselves. Understanding their core elements, shared social interaction, common ties, user-generated content, is fundamental to analyzing how these models actually work. For instance, a brand looking to launch a product needs to figure out which network is best suited for their target audience and how that platform's unique social dynamics will impact their marketing and sales. It's about selecting the appropriate e-commerce business models to address a specific business problem and then having the skills to really analyze each component of that model to build strong support for your own business ideas.
Makes sense. And speaking of evolution, the growth of these networks has been just, well, exponential. And a huge part of that engine is something we almost take for granted now: mobile devices.
Oh, absolutely. The rapid adoption and, let's face it, intense use of mobile devices have directly fueled the exponential growth of social networks. Almost every social network we interact with today could pretty accurately be called a mobile social network, given how much we access them through smartphones and tablets. Think about it. Our phones are almost always within reach, right? They act as a constant portal to our social lives. This isn't just a trend, it's a fundamental shift in how we consume digital media. Mobile consumption is really a primary trend driving social network usage today.
And to truly grasp their importance and influence, we need to look beyond just how many people have an account, right? We need to dig into how much time people actually spend on them. Engagement is key.
Exactly. When we talk about measuring the importance and comparing different social networks, two key metrics really stand out. First, monthly unique visitors, which tells you the sheer reach of a platform, how many individual eyeballs it captures. But perhaps even more critically, time on site, which reflects user stickiness and engagement. How long can they keep you there? These aren't just numbers. They tell a story about how much value users derive, how deeply integrated these platforms are into our daily routines, and how effective they are at holding our attention. Today's social networks are fundamentally different from earlier online communities because they're built on this strong user-generated content base and facilitate many-to-many communication. They're incredibly powerful enablers of social interaction, and that interaction translates directly into significant engagement time.
Yeah, it's incredible to think about how something like the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, must have massively impacted these engagement metrics as people spend even more time online, connecting from home. It really underscores how deeply mobile consumption affects online content trends. But let's be real, these platforms aren't just about sharing cat videos or keeping up with friends. There's a serious business model humming away behind the free service that we all, enjoy.
Right. And what's fascinating here is how social networks turn those connections into actual commerce. They've become incredibly powerful platforms, not just for socializing, but for sophisticated marketing, highly targeted advertising, and this emerging field we call social e-commerce. You see, they're not giving you a service for free out of pure altruism. They're monetizing your attention, your interactions, and the incredibly rich data you generate every time you use them.
And the dominant revenue streams are pretty clear, with one giant leading the pack, particularly here in the U.S., right?
Indeed. Advertising revenue is the absolute cornerstone. Media companies, websites, and especially social networks generate immense income by showing ads to their users. For instance, Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, utterly dominates U.S. ad spending on social networks. Their ability to deliver highly targeted ads makes them incredibly attractive to advertisers looking to reach specific demographics. Beyond ads, though, some platforms offer subscription revenue. They might offer premium, ad-free access, or enhanced features, appealing to users willing to pay for an uninterrupted or, richer experience.
And we're seeing companies get really creative with diversification strategies beyond just ads and subscriptions, which seems like a smart move in such a, dynamic market.
That's a critical point for any e-business student to grasp. Revenue diversification is a key strategy for financial stability in this kind of fast-moving environment. From a broader business perspective, companies need to continuously innovate. This can include product and service sales, where goods are sold directly through platform stores, think Facebook Marketplace or Instagram shopping features. It might also involve licensing revenue, where platforms charge fees for content or data usage by other businesses. It's really about adding value to existing services, expanding market reach, or partnering with other companies to create new income streams. Just like Apple diversified beyond computers into smartphones and services, social networks are constantly exploring new avenues to solidify their e-commerce business models.
And underpinning all of this, the kind of magic ingredient that makes that personalization and those targeted ads so effective is the immense power of data. Yes, software algorithms are absolutely fundamental for social networks. They enable the delivery of personalized content that keeps us engaged. Take Facebook's algorithm, for example. It meticulously generates personalized stories in your newsfeed, deciding what you see based on your past interactions, interests, connections, everything. This hyper-personalization is the engine behind targeted advertising, allowing advertisers to reach very specific custom audiences based on your browsing history, clicks, shares, likes, you name it. Understanding these ad-driven models and how content personalization works isn't just interesting, it's crucial for developing an appropriate e-business marketing strategy. If you can leverage these insights, you're already ahead of the game.
But this personalization, while it sounds incredibly powerful for businesses, it raises some pretty significant ethical dilemmas and user welfare concerns too, doesn't it? It feels like maybe we're trading convenience for something more subtle.
It absolutely does. Research, particularly from MIT Economics, introduces a critical economic model distinguishing between sophisticates and naïfs among social media users. So, the naive users, they tend to perceive digital ads as more informative than they actually are. They become over-optimistic about product quality, maybe leading to over-purchasing, and their subjective valuation of these ads is kind of inflated. They genuinely believe they're getting highly relevant, trustworthy information from the ads.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. It sounds like even the sophisticated users, those of us who think we're smart enough to see through the marketing tricks, aren't entirely off the hook either.
Precisely. While sophisticated users are aware of marketing strategies, they know, for instance, that Facebook uses their browsing history and interactions for custom audiences, they still face a negative welfare effect. Why? Because the inflated demand from the naive users can lead firms to charge higher product prices, which everyone, including the sophisticates, ends up paying. So even if you're not personally misled, you might still be, in a way, subsidizing the effects of others' perceptions. The research suggests that when platforms monetize primarily through advertising, overall user welfare for both naive and sophisticated users is generally lower compared to a subscription-based model. Digital ads in this context can actually soften competition between firms and platforms, allowing both to extract more revenue. This effect might even be intensified if platforms offer mixed business models, separating users into free ad-based plans and ad-free subscription plans, which can lead to further price discrimination.
Wow, so the surprising takeaway here isn't just that some users are more susceptible, but that the platform's own profit motive, by kind of catering to that naivete, actually works against the optimal welfare of all users, sophisticated or not. That's counterintuitive.
That's the counterintuitive truth, yeah.
Yeah.
The platform's profit-maximizing ad load is often higher than what would be optimal for user welfare because, mistakenly, the naive users actually prefer higher ad loads, believing them to be more informative and useful. This creates a significant ethical blur and a real challenge for market design. It relates directly to the legal, ethical, social, and political issues raised by e-commerce that anyone building these systems needs to grapple with.
This definitely brings up some deep ethical questions, especially around privacy. We often say we value privacy, but then we seem to give away so much data freely online. It's a paradox.
It is. The Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy points this out, this privacy paradox. Users state high privacy values, but then voluntarily share vast amounts of data. However, what's crucial and really interesting is that clear opt-in choices, like Apple's ad tracking feature introduced in iOS 14.5, show something different. When users are given a straightforward option that doesn't inhibit access to essential services, most do choose to protect their privacy. This really highlights that users value privacy when they have genuine control and transparent options. What's also fascinating here is how social network architectures can be structurally insensitive to the nuances of human sociality. They kind of flatten privacy norms across different social spheres, like how you might interact with family versus professional colleagues. They force a singular, often public presentation of self where different privacy expectations would naturally exist offline.
And there are broader societal critiques, too, aren't there, about the very nature of online connection. Are we truly more connected, or is something maybe being lost in translation?
Yeah, indeed. Critics like Albert Borgman and Sherry Turkle have voiced concerns about social hyperreality and alienation. They highlight how online social networks can potentially displace organic social realities, fostering a kind of peculiar alienation and connectedness and leading users to feel alone together. It makes us question whether these platforms truly enrich our social lives or merely create a superficial substitute. This also raises deep questions about identity and autonomy. Users' online selves are often constituted by platform categories and evaluated by popularity, leading to concerns about how identities are formed and, frankly, used. We see examples of pernicious identities like pro-ANA sites, which tragically promote harmful eating disorders. It illustrates how these platforms can be used for really damaging purposes, showcasing the profound ethical dilemmas they present.
So if these business models, driven heavily by advertising, seem to conflict with user welfare and ethical standards, what's the solution? Can regulation actually help here?
That's a really important question, and economic research suggests that yes, regulation can play a role. Things like linear taxes on digital ad revenues, often called digital ad taxes, can actually improve consumer welfare. By discouraging excessive ad loads, these taxes can encourage platforms to shift towards subscription-based models, which, as we discussed, generally offer higher user welfare. Now, the optimal solution is complex, probably involving nonlinear tax and subsidy schemes, but even simple flat taxes can make a difference. The practical implication is that governments can influence platform behavior to benefit users by making these ad-heavy models less profitable. For any e-business solution, assessing the security and ethical challenges is a crucial skill. Platforms have to operate within evolving legal and social expectations.
And there's a dark side for businesses too, isn't there? Beyond just user welfare and ethical questions. It's not all sunshine and marketing glory for them either.
Absolutely not. Laudon and Traver highlight several significant risks. Businesses face constant threats from negative comments and potential brand reputation damage. The challenge isn't just responding, but discerning genuine, constructive feedback from mere trolling, which can be tricky. What's interesting is that peer defense of a brand, when satisfied customers step in to advocate, can sometimes be far more powerful than any response from a customer service team. It really underscores the community aspect. There are also tricky ethical questions about employee social media use outside of the office and how much say an employer should have in that, a difficult line to walk between privacy and brand image. And we've seen manipulative practices, like the Facebook mood manipulation study back in 2014, where users' moods were altered without their consent by adjusting their news feeds. That raised serious concerns about research ethics and the immense, almost unseen power platforms wield over us.
Wow. With all this complexity and potential for manipulation, social networks can almost become a kind of battleground for power dynamics, where users themselves exert a collective force, sometimes with pretty impressive results.
That's a very apt description. Yeah, social networking platforms have indeed become battlegrounds where users collectively vent outrage to demand changes from service providers. We've seen this in action with Twitter users demanding improvements to harassment reporting tools after widespread complaints, or Reddit users successfully demanding the ouster of a CEO over hosting repugnant forums. It's a vivid demonstration of distributed user power. A large vocal community can force a platform's hand, proving that collective outrage can be a powerful driver of change.
But this collective power can also have a very dark, dangerous side, like cyber harassment and doxing.
Yes, absolutely. The increasing political character of online harassment, including doxing, which, for listeners, is posting someone's private personal information publicly, often with malicious intent, poses really complex ethical and legal challenges. Traditional law enforcement often struggles with the blurry lines between online harm and physical harm, and how to effectively police it when perpetrators can be anonymous or operate across international borders. This is a direct example of how legal, ethical, social, and political issues are deeply intertwined with e-commerce, with real-world consequences, often involving significant emotional and psychological distress for victims.
And the ethical dilemma of doxing itself is incredibly complex. I mean, when is public exposure justified social opprobrium, maybe for a public figure's misconduct, and when does it cross the line into immoral shaming or even putting someone in physical danger?
That's the crux of it. What's fascinating here is that differentiating between posting, say, a workplace address versus a home address raises significant moral questions. Is it justified social opprobrium for truly egregious public misconduct where maybe transparency is paramount? Or is it an invasion of privacy leading to potentially dangerous real-world consequences for an individual and their family? These are the kinds of nuanced meta-ethical questions that social networking services prompt. They make us reflect on whether traditional ethical frameworks like utilitarianism, focusing on overall good, Kantian ethics, emphasizing duty, or virtue ethics, considering character, are sufficient. Or maybe if a new global information ethics is needed, one that can account for intercultural differences in norms around things like emotional display, political criticism, and privacy. The real-world consequences of doxing and online harassment really underscore the importance of assessing these ethical challenges in any e-business solution. It's not just about building a platform, it's about building a responsible digital society.
That's a really powerful discussion. Okay, let's shift gears completely now to a different kind of digital marketplace, one that's all about the thrill of competition. Online auctions, there's a certain excitement to the bid, isn't there? But also some serious mechanics and psychology at play.
Indeed. The rise of online auctions, also known as e-auctions or virtual auctions, has fundamentally changed how goods and services are bought and sold. They're essentially structured sales events held over the internet, accessible by connected devices, and they come in a vast variety of types, each with its own bidding and selling rules. This is another major type of e-commerce business model offering unique opportunities and challenges.
And these weren't an overnight sensation either, right? They have a history rooted in surprisingly early online communities, much like social networks did.
That's right. Online auctions actually first appeared on web forums way back in 1979, on platforms like CompuServe and The Source. Can you imagine that? Early auctioneers would post notices describing items, minimum bids, closing times, and people would respond. Dedicated auction websites began to emerge around 1995, with onsale.com being one of the very first. Then, of course, eBay came along and just utterly leveraged this online auction model to become incredibly successful, starting as a community for trading unwanted items and connecting individual sellers with a global pool of buyers. Now, while eBay has since transformed, becoming a platform for large corporations selling at fixed prices too, it's now trying to refocus on its roots, recognizing that enduring appeal of the classic auction format.
So from a business or even a consumer perspective, what makes online auctions such a beneficial model? Why use an auction instead of just slapping a fixed price on something?
Well, there are several key benefits. First, liquidity. They connect sellers and buyers in a global marketplace, making it possible to trade items that might be difficult to price or sell locally, especially niche or collectible goods. Second, they're excellent for price discovery. They efficiently determine market prices for goods and services through competitive bidding. The market essentially sets the value in real time. Third, convenience. Conducting an auction digitally removes the hassle and expenses of live events. This is especially beneficial for nonprofits looking to raise funds they can reach a much broader donor base without the overhead of a physical gala. For buyers, there's the potential for reduced purchase prices and time savings due to a worldwide selection of products and suppliers. Understanding these benefits is crucial for selecting appropriate e-commerce business models to address a business problem, especially if your product has an uncertain market value or really benefits from competitive bidding.
Okay, but like most things digital, there's definitely a flip side. There are risks and costs for consumers that aren't immediately obvious when you're caught up in the bidding.
Absolutely. Consumers face several risks and costs. There are delayed consumption costs, right? Items may take days or even weeks to ship, and buyers might psychologically pay less because they aren't getting that immediate gratification. Monitoring costs, that's the time spent tracking bids, refreshing pages. It can add up significantly, especially for popular items. Equipment costs involve needing reliable computer systems and internet, though these are largely assumed today. Fulfillment costs mean buyers often pay for packing, shipping, and insurance, which can sometimes erase those perceived savings from the winning bid. And critically, trust risks are significant. Online auctions are unfortunately a major source of internet fraud. These are all factors that can influence a buyer's decision and overall satisfaction.
Now let's talk about the sheer variety of online auctions. When most people think of an auction, they probably picture one specific type, like the English auction. But there's a whole landscape out there, each with its own unique mechanics and strategic implications.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack this. Beyond the common understanding, there are at least 7 common online auction types, probably more depending on how you categorize. And choosing the right one is crucial for success, whether you're a business selling goods or a nonprofit trying to raise funds. Each type really optimizes for different outcomes.
Right, so let's start with the most familiar one, the classic ascending price auction.
That's the English option. It's what most people picture. An ascending price auction where the highest bidder wins. Competitive bidding naturally drives prices up, often exceeding a seller's initial expectation. This makes it frequently the best choice for maximizing revenue, especially for nonprofits or for unique, highly desirable items. The so what here is its transparency and simplicity make it incredibly engaging for bidders. But the risk for sellers is not finding the true ceiling if competition isn't fierce enough.
And then there's its complete opposite, the reverse auction, which sounds intriguing. How does that work?
Right, the reverse auction. Here, the roles are flipped. Multiple sellers lower their prices to bid for a buyer's business. The winner isn't always the one with the lowest price. Factors like speed, quality, or service levels can influence the buyer's final choice. Priceline famously pioneered a consumer-to-consumer version of this with their Name Your Own Price for travel, but it's now primarily used in B2B settings for procurement companies seeking the best deal on supplies or services. The insight here is that it puts the buyer squarely in control, driving down costs and ensuring competitive offers from suppliers. It's a powerful tool for large-scale purchasing.
Okay, I've heard of these next ones being quite controversial, almost like a game of chance in some ways. The penny auction.
The penny auction, or bidding fee auction. This model is pretty much exclusive to online platforms, and it's a fascinating study in behavioral economics, really. Bidders pay an upfront fee just to place bids, maybe 50 cents to $1 per bid, often sold in packs. Each bid raises the item's price by just a tiny amount, like a penny, and the last bidder standing when the timer runs out wins the item, usually at a very low final price. But here's the critical part. It costs money to bid even if you lose, so it's often compared to gambling. The true cost includes all the bids you've placed, not just the final winning price. The real insight here isn't just that it's a unique online model, but that it often preys on a classic psychological fallacy, the sunk cost fallacy. It's highly profitable for the platform precisely because most bidders aren't accurately calculating their total spending. It's like a masterclass in behavioral economics, often at the user's expense.
That certainly changes the dynamic, puts a lot of pressure on the bidder. What about a Dutch auction? That sounds different again?
A Dutch auction starts with a high opening price, and the auctioneer gradually lowers it until a buyer accepts that price. There's usually only one seller involved. It's often used by companies seeking investors, for example, lowering share prices to gauge demand and find the optimal price point quickly. While it's similar to a reverse auction in that the price moves downwards, the key difference is a single seller adjusting their price down to find the first willing buyer at a certain level. The so what for a business here is speed. It's incredibly efficient for selling large quantities of identical items or rapidly finding a market clearing price.
Then we move into sealed bids, where the transparency is lowered during the bidding process itself, adding an element of mystery or strategy.
Exactly. In a first price sealed bid auction, bidders submit a single confidential bid. The highest bid wins, plain and simple. But there's no real-time competition to drive prices up during the auction. This means bidders have to guess what others might bid, risking either overpaying significantly or bidding too low and losing out. The challenge for a bidder is finding that sweet spot based on their own valuation and anticipating others. Related to this is the Vickery auction, or sealed second price auction. It's similar in that bids are confidential and the highest bid wins, but the highest bidder only pays the amount of the second highest bid. This design aims to alleviate the winner's concern of overpaying and actually encourages bidders to bid their true valuation because there's no penalty for bidding high. If you win, you only pay what the next person was willing to pay. It's considered a truth-revealing mechanism for goods. The fascinating insight is that it theoretically maximizes seller revenue by encouraging these honest bids, while making winners feel less like they got ripped off or fell victim to the winner's curse.
And finally, a model that often combines quantity with price, which must be important for bulk sales or similar situations.
That's the multi-unit auction, often seen on platforms like eBay for certain listings or Taobao.com. Here, bidders bid on both price and the quantity they want. Typically, all winning bidders pay the lowest successful bid price that clears the available quantity. This is sometimes also referred to as a Dutch internet auction in this specific context. So for managers considering auctions, Laudon and Traver emphasize looking at factors like the type of product, its life cycle stage, and whether to use open versus closed bidding. Selecting the right auction type is really crucial for success, especially for something like fundraising where maximizing return is key. Understanding these detailed auction mechanisms is a core part of describing e-commerce business models and their key elements. It's also a vital skill in selecting the appropriate models for specific business problems, whether that's procurement or sales or fundraising.
What's truly fascinating here, though, is that even with all these structured types and rules, human behavior in auctions often isn't purely rational, is it? It frequently seems to defy simple economic models. It's like our primal instincts kick in sometimes.
No, absolutely. That's right. Consumers frequently behave non-rationally in auctions, going against what might seem like logical, profit-maximizing decisions based purely on value. This is where the psychology of the bidder really comes into play, and it's something e-business strategists absolutely must account for when designing auction platforms or strategies.
So what are some of the key things that influence these non-rational bidding behaviors? Why do we sometimes make choices that seem, well, illogical after the fact?
Well, several key psychological influences are often at work. One big one is herd behavior. This is the tendency for bidders to gravitate towards and bid on items that already have existing bids. It's a kind of social proof mechanism. If others want it, it must be good. This can lead to higher prices for these coveted comparables, while similar, maybe identical, overlooked comparables receive no bids at all, often for no logical economic reason. Then there's the quasi-endowment effect. A greater number of early participants in an auction can foster a sense of ownership among bidders, even without any legal claim to the item. This leads to more active and aggressive later bidding. It's like, I've invested my time and attention in this, it's mine now. Social facilitation also plays a role. Bidders often perform more aggressively, place more bids, bid higher, simply because they are in the presence, even virtually, of other bidders. That competition itself fuels the behavior, affecting price, timing, and overall market outcomes.
I've definitely seen the anchoring effect in action myself, where that initial starting price really sets an expectation, sometimes a misleading one.
Yes, the anchoring effect is very common and powerful. A low starting price draws in more bidders, creating excitement and the perception of a bargain. But it often results in lower final bids overall, as bidders' internal valuations become unconsciously anchored to that initial low value, even if the item is objectively worth much more. And who hasn't experienced bidding fever? That's when emotional excitement, the adrenaline rush of the final seconds, causes bidders to exceed their preset spending limits. I've definitely been there frantically clicking for something I probably didn't even really need, just for the thrill of winning. It's like your rational brain just switches off for a moment.
Absolutely. And the platforms are often brilliantly engineered to tap into that exact primal urge, aren't they? They understand our psychology almost better than we understand our own wallets sometimes.
Indeed. And finally, there's the winner's curse. This happens when the winning bidder actually incurs a loss because they had an inaccurate assessment of the object's true value or resale value, largely stemming from uncertainty during the bidding process. They get caught up in the competition and end up overpaying relative to the item's actual worth. Bidders also experience dynamic emotional dynamics, shifting between excitement at winning and frustration at losing, and these emotions change dynamically based on the outcomes of previous bids they've placed. Understanding this complex consumer psychology in auctions is vital for recalling different e-business marketing strategies and designing effective pricing or auction models.
Beyond the bidders themselves, certain auction settings and attributes also significantly impact behavior and outcomes. It's like these subtle environmental cues are influencing things too.
Absolutely right. Things like product pictures, for instance, are incredibly powerful. High-quality images can significantly increase the perceived utility and desirability of auction products, which directly drives up bids. Visual appeal matters. Bid increments, the minimum amount the bid must increase each time, have a nuanced effect. They can have a positive effect on participation below a certain value, making it easy to jump in with a small raise. But they can have a negative effect above a certain threshold, potentially discouraging new bids if the required jump feels too large or risky. This can significantly impact the auctioneer's final revenue. Duration of the auction has conflicting findings in research. Some studies show a positive correlation with the final price due to the arrival process effect. Simply put, more time allows more potential bidders to find and join the auction. Others show a negative correlation attributed to the waiting time effect. Buyers discount the value because of the utility lost by delaying gratification. Seller reputation can moderate this relationship. But generally, consumers tend to prefer shorter auctions because of lower search, delay, and monitoring costs. Their time is valuable too. And specific end timings matter. Research shows phenomena like the weekend effect, higher prices often achieved for auctions ending on a weekend when more people might be online, and even a midnight effect, where last-minute bidding surges often happen as deadlines approach.
Okay, and what are the bidders themselves, their individual attributes? Do things like reputation or experience make a tangible difference in auction outcomes?
Well, for bidders, their reputation is generally less significant than a seller's reputation. It's often seen as unreliable due to lenient feedback systems on many platforms, and it's rarely used as a key reference point by other bidders when deciding whether to bid against someone. However, experience is definitely key. Experienced bidders learn successful strategies over time, such as how to snipe effectively, placing a winning bid in the very last seconds, or when it's strategically best to drop out of bidding. But their impact on overall auction behavior is weaker when strategic dominance is weak, meaning in auctions where luck or simple high valuation matters more than complex strategy. Analyzing how all these different auction design elements influence behavior is a crucial skill for understanding each component of an e-commerce business model, especially if you're thinking about planning or implementing options yourself as part of a business strategy.
Now, just as we discussed with social networks, there's unfortunately a dark side to bidding as well. The prevalence of fraud and abuse in online auctions, which can make them a pretty risky endeavor for unsuspecting participants.
Yes, this is a major concern and something anyone participating needs to be aware of. The anonymity of the internet, the vast global market it provides, and the sheer ease of access make online auction fraud much easier to perpetrate than in traditional face-to-face auctions where people are physically present. Fraud related to online auctions consistently ranks high in internet crime reports. For example, it accounted for a staggering 35 to 63% of the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center reports back in the mid-2000s. While things have improved, it remains a significant issue. This is a prime example of a key security issue within the e-commerce environment that businesses and consumers alike need to be acutely aware of.
Wow, that's a staggering statistic. Even if it's from a while back, it highlights the scale. So, what are some of the most common types of fraud and abuse that consumers and platforms really need to watch out for in these environments?
Yeah, there are several sophisticated methods fraudsters use. Shill bidding is very prominent. That's where sellers or their associates using secondary ideas submit fake bids on their own items to artificially inflate the price with no actual intention of winning or paying. It's difficult to detect definitively, but patterns can emerge. It's illegal in many places, like the UK, where it can incur significant fines if caught. Then there's shield bidding. This is sneakier. A buyer might use a secondary shield account to drive up the price significantly, deterring other bidders, only to retract that high bid at the very last moment, allowing their primary account to swoop in and win at a much lower price. This is harder on sites that restrict bid withdrawals, though. Other forms include bid rigging, which involves offline agreements between supposed competitors to limit bidding or coordinate actions. Price matching informal agreements between sellers to set minimum floor prices. Shill feedback, using fake accounts to artificially inflate one's own seller rating, or conversely, deflating a competitor's rating unfairly. We also see feedback extortion, threatening to leave negative feedback unless the seller provides some extra benefit. Transaction interference, maliciously warning legitimate buyers away from a particular seller via email or other messages. Bid manipulation, like using the retraction feature if available, simply to discover the current highest bidder's maximum bid, then retracting and submitting a slightly higher bid, and simply non-payment after winning, which wastes the seller's time and blocks legitimate buyers from getting the item.
And beyond just manipulating the bidding process itself, there's the more serious issue you touched on, online auctions. being used as a conduit for selling stolen goods, right?
Unfortunately, yes. The anonymity and global reach of online options make them highly attractive to organized criminals for selling stolen items, sometimes in bulk, far away from where the theft occurred. This poses significant legal and ethical challenges for the platforms hosting the auctions, for law enforcement trying to track these goods, and of course for consumers who might unknowingly purchase stolen property. Imagine buying what you think is a legitimate item only to find out later it was stolen. This knowledge outcome, recognizing key security issues and relating them to the legal, ethical, social, and political issues raised by e-commerce, is directly applicable here. Any business operating an auction platform must have robust systems and policies in place to try and combat this illicit trade.
So with all these risks, who is actually protecting the interests of consumers and legitimate businesses in this dynamic, sometimes dangerous online auction environment? It sounds like a constant cat-and-mouse game between the platforms and the fraudsters.
It really is precisely that, and it requires a multi-pronged effort involving several parties. Governments play a crucial role. Agencies like the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, in the U.S., or the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, ACCC, provide guidance, investigate patterns of fraud, and enforce fair trading rules. They act as the regulatory watchdogs. Customers themselves often form online communities for mutual support, education about common scams, and sometimes even controversial retaliation against perceived scammers, like publicly revealing scammers' information or trying to disrupt their fraudulent transactions, though these actions can be legally risky themselves. And then the platforms themselves have a massive responsibility and invest heavily in protection. They implement secure payment systems like PayPal's buyer protection policies. Some may hold funds in escrow temporarily, collect deposits for high-value items to ensure bidders' seriousness, and actively monitor for and freeze fraudulent accounts. However, fraudsters are adaptable and can often easily register new accounts after being banned, making it an ongoing battle that requires continuous innovation in fraud detection technologies and strategies.
So relying solely on the platform's built-in protections might not always be enough, especially when dealing with high-value items or unfamiliar sellers.
That's often the case, yes. And that's where escrow services can come in. These involve neutral, trusted third parties, TTPs, who essentially guarantee the transaction security. They hold the buyer's funds until certain contractual conditions are met, usually, the buyer receiving and approving the item. This adds an extra layer of protection for both the buyer and the seller, and is especially important for higher-risk transactions involving significant sums of money or items where condition is subjective. For our students, this really emphasizes the practical skill of assessing key security issues related to any proposed e-business solution and evaluating the associated legal, ethical, social, and political aspects. Fraud prevention can't just be an afterthought. It must be baked into the design and operation of the system from the ground up.
Okay, great discussion on auctions. Now let's explore our third major pillar of the digital economy for today: web portals. They've been around for a long time, and sometimes they get dismissed as relics of an earlier internet era, maybe like the 90s.
Right.
But their role has really evolved quite significantly, hasn't it? They aren't just simple start pages anymore.
That's absolutely right. At its most basic, a web portal is a specially designed website that aims to integrate information from diverse sources, things like emails, online forums, news feeds, search engines, and present it all in a uniform, often user-configurable way. Typically, this is done through dedicated areas on the page called portlets. The original idea was really to be a single point of access, a gateway to a potentially overwhelming universe of online content and services.
And their history truly shows a clear shift in purpose over time, moving from being just simple gateways to becoming much more complex digital ecosystems.
Indeed. The term portal really emerged prominently in the late 1990s. The goal then was to be the ultimate starting point, or gateway, for web browsing. Think of the early big players like Netscape, Go.com, Lycos, Yahoo, MSN. They wanted to capture users from the very moment they opened their browser. But over time, many of these evolved beyond just being gateways into what we now call destination sites. They started attracting large audiences to their own proprietary offerings of news, products, entertainment, various kinds of content, much like traditional television networks offering a full programming lineup. They wanted you to stay on their site, not just use it as a launchpad to go somewhere else.
Right. But despite those massive audiences they attracted, profitability has often been a significant challenge for many portals, correct? It feels like many of those early giants really struggled to effectively monetize all that traffic they were getting.
Yes, that's historically been a major hurdle. Despite attracting huge numbers of users, general-purpose portals often struggle to produce consistent profits. The market is often characterized by strong network effects, where the value of the network increases with the number of users, which tends to lead to dominance by just a few large players. This makes it tough for others to compete effectively for advertising revenue and user attention. However, today, their defining characteristics still often include navigation of the web, providing diverse content, and serving as a starting point for e-commerce, but now with a much greater emphasis on integration, personalization, and providing specific value beyond just links.
What's fascinating here is how many different types of portals exist now, tailored for very specific experiences. They've moved far beyond those original general-purpose giants like Yahoo or AOL.
Absolutely. Portals can be broadly classified as either horizontal or vertical. A horizontal portal is that broad platform designed for many users or perhaps companies within the same economic sector. Think of those general-purpose portals like Yahoo or MSN in their heyday, trying to be all things to all people.
Okay, so a vertical portal, then, would be much more specialized, almost niche-focused in its content and audience.
Exactly. A vertical portal, often called a vortal, is a specialized entry point catering to a specific market, an industry niche, particular subject area, or a defined interest group. Within this category, you find things like vertical information portals, VIPs, which provide not just news and editorial content relevant to that niche, but also digital publications, specialized e-commerce capabilities, and dynamic multimedia applications, maybe including social networking features, video posting, blogging, all tightly focused within that specific domain. Understanding these different types is really crucial for evaluating different hardware and software e-business platforms and ultimately selecting the right kind of portal approach to solve a particular business problem.
And the examples really showcase this incredible diversity, ranging from government sites consolidating citizen services to cultural hubs bringing museum collections online.
They truly do. We have news portals, which aggregate news feeds either for broad interests or very specific topics. Personal portals are personalized web pages acting as pathways to other content, often with user customization through widgets or JavaScript. Think of a highly customized iGoogle page back in the day, or a modern dashboard. Government portals are critical infrastructure for citizens like usa.gov or gov.uk, or specific government branches, consolidating services and information access. Cultural portals aggregate digitized collections from galleries, libraries, archives, and museums, institutions, providing access to often invisible web cultural content. Great examples are Europeana or Digital NZ. Then there are corporate intranet portals, which have been common since the 1990s. They offer employees and sometimes partners or customers a consolidated view of company information, personalization, workflow management tools, collaboration features, and secure access acting as a single hub for internal operations and communication.
And we definitely can't forget search, which is foundational for how many portals operate or got their start.
Right. Search portals aggregate results from multiple search engines, often specialized ones. Think of property search portals like Rightmove or Zillow, which allow you to search across listings from many different real estate agents all in one place. Tender portals are specialized gateways, usually for government procurement, allowing suppliers to find and bid on contracts for goods and services online, managing the whole tendering process electronically. Hosted portals are often offered as a software as a service, SaaS, solution, focusing on collaboration, scheduling, document management, maybe integrating email and discussion forums, often with automatic content personalization for each user. And finally, domain-specific portals cater very tightly to a particular domain, like those property portals linking estate agents, surveyors, and solicitors, or maybe clinical trials portals that aggregate research data for medical professionals. So the interesting question isn't really whether portals are dead, but rather which of these specialized portal types are truly thriving in today's mobile-first world, and what makes them different from the dead general-purpose portals of the past.
That's a great question to ask. Are those traditional broad portals a dying breed? Or are we seeing them kind of re-emerge in new forms? Maybe as those highly personalized dashboards you mentioned, or even the super apps we see becoming dominant in places like Asia.
That's precisely the evolution we're witnessing. While the broad, everything for everyone horizontal portals of the 90s definitely struggled to maintain relevance and profitability against specialized apps and search engines, the core concept of a personalized, integrated gateway is arguably stronger than ever. Think of a modern financial dashboard app that pulls in your banking data, investment portfolio, credit scores, maybe even bills that's a portal. Or a project management tool that aggregates your tasks, team communications, shared documents, and timelines. That's a corporate portal, essentially. And you're absolutely right about super apps like WeChat in China or Grab in Southeast Asia. They are arguably the ultimate modern portals, integrating messaging, social media, payments, ride-hailing, food delivery, e-commerce, and countless other services into a single, indispensable mobile application. The key differentiator today seems to be deep, targeted value and seamless integration, often designed mobile first from the ground up. They've learned the lesson that deep vertical content or highly integrated functionality targeted at a specific niche or need typically yields higher engagement and potentially higher revenues per customer than trying to be a shallow layer over everything. So, the survival strategy for any remaining general purpose portals today often involves attracting a broad audience initially, perhaps with search or news, and then quickly funneling them into deep channels of specialized interest where they can serve highly targeted advertising, offer premium services, or facilitate specific transactions.
Okay, so how do these modern portals, or the surviving older ones, actually make money, especially given those profitability challenges you mentioned earlier that plagued their predecessors?
Right, that's an important question, especially for identifying the key elements of different e-commerce business models. Laudon and Traver outline several main revenue sources that portals have traditionally used, and some are still relevant. While less common now for standalone portals, ISP services charging a monthly fee for internet access and maybe bundled email was a traditional model for companies like AOL. More broadly today, general advertising, charging for banner ad impressions, video ads, sponsored content, or more sophisticated native advertising integrated into the portal's content is still a very common model. Eyeballs equal ad revenue. Tenancy deals are another significant potential source. This is where companies pay, often substantial amounts, for long-term, multi-year contracts, guaranteeing them premium placement and a certain number of impressions on the portal. It's like renting prime digital real estate or securing exclusive marketing partnerships within the portal environment. And of course, subscription fees for access to premium content, ad-free experiences, enhanced features, or specialized data services can also be a key revenue stream, particularly for vertical or specialized portals.
But even with these potentially diversified revenue streams, you said profitability remains a struggle for many, which still feels a bit counterintuitive given the potentially large user bases they can attract. Why is it so hard?
Yes, that's the puzzling part, isn't it? Despite potentially attracting massive audiences, especially the more general purpose ones, portals often struggle to achieve consistent profitability. This is where market dynamics, intense competition from specialized apps and services, and shifting user behaviors really come into play. Users might use a portal for one thing, like search or email, but immediately leave for another specialized service for everything else. The case of Yahoo and AOL really underscores this difficulty. The Insight on Business case study highlights their struggles over the years. Verizon's ultimately failed attempts to revitalize and integrate its acquisitions of Yahoo and AOL, and their subsequent sale to a private equity firm, Apollo Global Management, really underscore the inherent challenges in the traditional broad portal business model in the modern internet landscape. It's a stark reminder for anyone in e-business that audience size alone doesn't automatically translate to profitability, especially when competing against highly focused services and adapting to constantly changing user habits and technology. Understanding these portal revenue streams and the associated market trends is a core part of studying e-commerce business models and online content consumption patterns.
Let's talk a bit about the actual engineering behind these gateways then. What are the key technological components that make a portal function, especially when they're designed to pull information together from so many different, often disparate sources?
Okay, so what does this all mean for the technical side, the actual nuts and bolts? The core engineering concept behind a portal is to present a single, unified web page or interface that seamlessly aggregates content and functionality from numerous other back-end systems or servers. This requires a pretty robust back-end infrastructure. Typically, this involves powerful application servers to process user requests and business logic, database servers to store and retrieve vast amounts of information, user profiles, content, configuration data, and often clustered environments with load balancing. Load balancing is crucial to distribute incoming traffic across multiple servers, handle high loads gracefully, and ensure the portal remains available even if one server fails. It's like a grand conductor orchestrating many different instruments, the various data sources and applications into one harmonious performance for the user.
And what about on the user's side, the front end? What we actually see and interact with in our browsers? How has that evolved from the clunkier portals of the early days?
Right, the front-end experience has changed dramatically. Modern portals rely heavily on sophisticated JavaScript frameworks and libraries, things like React, Angular, or Vue.js. These frameworks enable developers to build highly interactive and dynamic user interfaces. They leverage contemporary web functionalities like WebSockets for establishing real-time, persistent two-way communication between the browser and the server. Think live chat updates, collaborative editing, or instant notifications appearing without you needing to constantly refresh the page. They also make heavy use of asynchronous callbacks, often using techniques like AJX, asynchronous JavaScript and XML, or the newer Fetch API. This allows parts of a web page to update independently, fetching new data from the server in the background without reloading the entire page. This has evolved significantly from older, less dynamic methods like using HTML frame sets or iframes to embed content, allowing for a much more fluid, responsive, and app-like user experience today. So essentially, these are the invisible gears and levers running in your browser that make a modern portal or web application feel incredibly fast and responsive, almost like a native desktop or mobile app, rather than just a static page that needs a full reload every time you click something.
And the modular nature of portals, with those portlets you mentioned earlier, that sounds like a very smart design choice for managing all that aggregated content and functionality effectively.
It is, yes. Application functionality can often be broken down into discrete, reusable components called portlets. Each portlet might handle a specific task, displaying news, showing email previews, providing a search bar, etc. And these portlets can then be arranged and presented on multiple different portal pages, often customized by the user. This modular architecture is largely transparent to the end user, who just sees the final composed page, but it's crucial for the developers for managing complexity, enabling easier maintenance, and allowing for scalability. Different teams can work on different portlets independently. In such complex, integrated designs, security and concurrent user capacity become absolutely paramount considerations during development. Robust authentication, verifying who the user is, and authorization, determining what they are allowed to see and do, mechanisms are vital to prevent vulnerabilities and attacks, ensuring that only legitimate users can access specific content or functions appropriate to their role or permissions. This ties directly back to that skill of assessing key security issues related to any proposed business solution you need to secure the entire integrated ecosystem, not just individual parts.
Okay, that makes sense. Are there established standards that help ensure all these different components, maybe portlets from different vendors or systems, can actually talk to each other and work together smoothly within a single portal environment?
Yes, thankfully, standards have emerged to help with that. Standards like JSR 168, Java Specification Request, and its successor, JSR 286, for the Java world specifically, defined APIs for portlets. These standards enable the interoperability of portlets across different portal platforms that adhere to the standard. This means developers could potentially build a portlet once and deploy it on various compatible portal servers from different vendors. This kind of standardization helps foster a more cohesive and efficient ecosystem, reducing vendor lock-in and promoting greater flexibility in building and customizing portals by allowing integration of components from multiple sources. It's kind of like having a universal plug-and-play system, but for web application components within a portal framework.
And looking ahead, what are some of the emerging trends in portal technology? Where's this all heading now, beyond the super apps we mentioned?
Well, we're seeing several exciting developments. Cloud portals are a big one. These leverage the power and flexibility of cloud computing, often using API-rich software systems, service-oriented architecture, SOA, and web services for extensive machine-to-machine interaction behind the scenes. This can create a highly fluid and integrated user experience that seamlessly pulls together data and functionality from multiple different cloud services, potentially across different providers, into a single user interface. Examples like the Nubifer Cloud Portal showcase things like enterprise mashups and web service integration to achieve this. So instead of a rigid single page pulling from internal systems, you get a dynamic experience orchestrating many distributed cloud services. Additionally, with the explosion of user-generated content within many platforms, blogs, comments, photos, forum posts, there's a growing need for skills in information architecture and taxonomy. Taxonomists are experts who design classification systems and structures. These skills are essential for allowing users and the system itself to effectively tag or classify vast amounts of unstructured data. This, in turn, facilitates better ad hoc navigation, more relevant search results, and more intelligent information flows across the portal. For students listening, this whole segment directly addresses the learning outcome of evaluating different hardware and software e-business platforms. And it hits on the skill outcome of selecting appropriate solutions, especially when you think about implementing an e-commerce project that needs to integrate databases, web pages, and scripting languages, as mentioned in the course description for BCIS 5379. Understanding these engineering aspects is critical.
Okay, so the concepts we've explored today, Social networks, auctions, and portals are clearly much more than just academic exercises or historical footnotes. They form the foundational fabric of the digital economy we all operate in, and understanding them deeply is absolutely crucial for anyone looking to build a successful career in e-commerce or related tech fields.
Absolutely. Bridging that learning to a tangible career path is essential, and the detailed knowledge we've discussed today is directly applicable to many different roles across the tech and business landscape. Let's focus for a moment on one specific position that beautifully ties many of these concepts together: the social marketing specialist.
Okay, interesting. What exactly does that role entail, and how does our discussion today about social networks, maybe even portals and auction psychology, fit into that?
Well, this position requires a really deep understanding of how social networks function as business platforms, not just places for social interaction. It's about knowing how to strategically engage online communities, how to analyze digital content performance, and how to interpret user behavior for effective marketing campaigns and objectives. The skills learned from understanding ad-driven business models, navigating the ethical dilemmas around data use, developing media content strategies to support revenue models, even understanding the psychology of engagement. These are all directly relevant. You're essentially leveraging technological understanding and psychological insights to craft compelling campaigns and then measure their impact using platform analytics.
Got it. So what kind of qualifications and specific skills would someone really need to excel in a role like a social marketing specialist today?
They'd certainly need strong knowledge of various social network business models, how each platform makes money, and what that implies for advertisers. They need sophisticated content strategy skills, what works on TikTok versus LinkedIn, for instance. And effective engagement tactics are key. Crucially, though, they'd also need the ability to navigate the complex ethical and technical landscapes we've outlined today. That means understanding data privacy regulations like GDPR or CCPA, anticipating user welfare concerns related to advertising or content, and being able to assess key security issues related to their proposed campaigns or use of platform tools. This really demonstrates how a comprehensive understanding of e-business marketing strategies, combined with awareness of legal, ethical, and security issues, translates directly into practical, highly in-demand skills in the job market.
Makes perfect sense. And if you're a student listening and preparing for an interview for such a role or a similar digital marketing position, what should you expect? What kind of questions might come your way based on what we've covered?
Yeah, good question. Your preparation should definitely involve thinking deeply about concepts like the influence of platform algorithms on content reach and visibility. How do you work with the algorithm? Also, the complexities of data privacy and user consent are huge. How do you run effective campaigns ethically? And practical strategies for community management, particularly how you'd handle negative feedback or a potential brand crisis online, are essential. These are topics that come up constantly in real-world business scenarios. So possible interview questions might revolve around: how would you measure user engagement beyond just simple vanity metrics like likes? How would you manage negative feedback on a platform while still protecting the brand's reputation? How do you identify the key features or user behaviors that drive success on different social networks like Instagram versus Twitter? They might also ask you to discuss the business models of various platforms and how that affects advertising strategy, or how you would develop an appropriate media content strategy to support a specific proposed revenue model or campaign goal. The comprehensive understanding gained across all these topics — networks, auctions, portals, the tech, the business, the ethics — really helps students develop a professional e-business proposal by applying theoretical knowledge to these practical career scenarios. And that ability to connect theory to practice is a key writing and critical thinking outcome. So wrapping things up for today, we've journeyed through the really intricate worlds of social networks, online auctions, and web portals. We've seen how they are meticulously engineered, not just for connection, but very much for commerce, from those personalized ad algorithms subtly influencing our choices and purchasing behavior, to the powerful psychological triggers inherent in an auction bid, and the strategic positioning of web gateways that shape our entire online experience. These aren't just features floating on a screen. They are fundamental, constantly evolving components of the digital economy that you are now, hopefully, better equipped to understand and, crucially, to build upon in your own careers.
Yeah, we started by asking you to consider the unseen forces shaping your digital life. And now, hopefully, you have a much deeper understanding of the systems, the people, and the strategic thinking behind every click, every bid, and every single scroll. You're not just users anymore. You're potentially the future architects of these digital experiences, ready to analyze, innovate, and lead in this space. If this deep dive sparked your curiosity today and provided you with some valuable insights, please do remember to like, subscribe, and share this with anyone else you know who's looking to understand the core technologies of e-business and really wants to own their career growth in this incredibly dynamic field. And don't forget, you can find a wealth of additional resources, links to the source materials down in the description below.
Every transaction, every connection, every innovation, it all starts with someone who understands the system behind the screen. So the next time you find yourself scrolling through a social feed or maybe getting caught up in an online auction, I want you to ask yourself, what unseen engineering is at play right here, right now, and how could I, as a future business strategist or technologist, potentially leverage or even improve it? Until next time, stay curious, stay strategic, and keep turning complexity into opportunity.